continuamos ahora en espanyol. Podem fer una barreja entre català i espanyol, com ho vulguis.
Català-anglès, si voleu, també.
Anglès, també, sí.
Perquè jo he vist que hi ha molts alumnes que venen d'altres països, també.
Sí, si vols, continuem en anglès. També és una possibilitat.
If you want, yeah. For me, it's okay.
Well, so we continue now in English. Maybe we have some mistakes, or many. But, well, first of all, all you know, Hèctor Parra is one of the most important composers today. And is one of the professors in this Mixtur edition. We have six composers. Coming this year is Christophe Habel from France, Pierluigi Bilione from Italy, Rodrigo Sigal from Mexico, Fabián Panisello from Argentina living in Spain, and Wolfgang Heinegger from Germany, and Hèctor. So will be during the Mixtur 2 different workshops divided in 2 blocks. And as mentioned before, Uriol, we have some of miniatures performed and reading sessions and classes. So I could like to ask also from Hèctor will have 2 pieces during the festival. One will perform with Proxima Centauri, and the other string quartet from Diotima. This is a collaboration with the Auditori Sampler Series. So I could like to ask you 2 different things separately, but I say now, and maybe we see which one take longer. But for one hand, of course, about your approach in music, and if you can resume your composition language. But for another hand, also I could like to about Paris and how is the contemporary music there, and we can have some exchanges, ideas about what's happening here and what's happened there, what is the difference. So, but first, if we can start about your music, that's a bit different things.
Yeah.
So, can you speak about what is the most important in your approach when you are composing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not easy to say from oneself this. It's more an analytic thing, but I start music playing the piano, so I really start music practicing music. And then composition came later. Of course, since I was a kid, I wrote, but I never thought this as a really main activity. After I realized, after years, that piece after piece, now I did about 80 pieces at that moment. For me, the most important is the perception of form, in some way, architecture. So every detail I work, everything in the micro scale of a piece, every even emotional passage, which I love to work with emotional richness in my music. It has to do about global architecture, global form. That for me, at the end, I realize that is the thing that is more difficult to realize, to build finally. But yeah, tension. I think in the music today, of course, I love to go to concerts. In Paris, we have the chance that we have tens of concerts per week. Of course, I can go only to a few of them. But I realize that we composers today, we have to work hard on kind of a structural tension. That classic music, of course, the masters of classic music, or even romantic, post-romantic, whatever, they had this structural tension in their styles, of course. Now we have newer styles. We have a polyphony of stylistic polyphony, but maybe we have lost a lot of structural tension. In the sense of polyphony, of functionality of the music stuff. Today, I perceive we really have to work hard on it, and is what I try also to work with my students at IRCA.
Speaking about proportion,
not really proportion.
What about in which sense?
Yeah, no, more about function and activity, inner life of the materials, and interconnection between materials, more than proportions of time. I think, for example, let's think about classic or romantic sonata, from Schubert to Gustav Mahler. these sonatas are kind of living beings, are not like the most academic or the most hyper-classical sonatas from early period, are kind of music that dialectically works in such a way that material develops constantly, even in the recapitulation. So, of course, we are talking now about classic music, but this constant evolution of materials, tied with a kind of dialectics, creates a sense of drama, a sense of life that really touches hard on human spirit. I think today it's difficult to find such strengths. Of course, not in the same kind. We are not doing sonatas today. We don't have. I mean, the best sonatas has been already done in history of music. But we should work in the sense that maybe even if we work with minimal materials, it doesn't matter. But interconnection in several also layers, several microscale, mesoscale, which for me is the most difficult scale in music composition, and microscale. The interconnections between these different layers of a structure are difficult today. I think new music is quite young anyway, and we don't have systems like tonality, for example, that helps a lot, of course, to sustain tensions in a piece. So we have to work. Of course, the spectralism, for example, in 70s, 80s in France, was a strong trial, a strong success into dealing with tensions and dealing with sound, interconnecting spectrum of sound, color, timbre, and sonic explorations. So, and Stracta, of course, everything was linked to Stracta. Stockhausen in the 60s, 50s, 60s was dealing about that. In every piece of Stockhausen at that time was a kind of global scope of this matter. He formalized a universe for every piece in the 50s, 60s, early 60s.
So you are mentioning the 60s, the 70s, and also the 80s.
That is more difficult.
What's you think now and the next? Speaking about, of course,
next generation.
The next, maybe the next 20 years to have a perspective only to think. What do you think? What are the different?
It's very difficult to have perspectives in the future because
even
if we should travel at the speed of light or scarcely at the speed, but to know the future. But I think since 90s, 2000, at the beginning of 2000, a strong thing happened in the panorama. That was the synthesis arrived in some way. A new synthesis, we can call this a kind of new synthesis, where the young generation, even a little bit older than mine, I was born in 76, but I mean the generation of the 60s and in the 70s, realized that maximum 4 or 5 branches of a big tree were a little bit, blocked in their own vision of the music world. One was, for example, spectralism, that dealt with amazingly rich color developments, but quite, let's say, wide and not poor, but quite relaxed tensional rhythmic tensions, formal rhythmic tensions. The new, quite connection with electronic music and kind of Lachemann approach, musique concrète instrumentale, which was dealing with a new investigation of sound developments, how the shapes of the sound itself could develop forms and could help the composer to think new sonic architectures. In that sense, we can think in pieces like Concertini, which was composed in 2005, but then Lachemann, spectralism. In Germany today, a clash of these two, with Italian Charino and all of these more dramaturgical investigations that were amazing. Then new complexity in England and Brian Fernighout, some other countries too, which was the climax of writing and writing everything, and the climax of post-serialism, because serialism was very strong in the 70s. Now we don't think about that, but every composer in the 70s was minimal or was serial. I mean, now serialism has been completely forgotten, banned from, because of course sounds a little bit old-fashioned maybe. Minimalism, that is still alive, very strong alive. So we have these 5 branches. But for example, myself, I cannot talk for everybody. I mean, I am not anyway a musicologist, so I am not really interested in really thinking what will happen. Or anyway, I talk for me. I am interested in thinking what will happen on my activity. I am pushed to make it clash in myself, collide several of these interests, several of these branches. Of course, my departure point in composition was really the legacy of the 60s. I was completely obsessed because it was lovely to listen. It was from the 80s, 90s, this piece, but the composer that pushed really me to compose was Ligeti, the 60s second string quartet, the 10 pieces for wind quintet, the cello concerto. In this music pushed me to compose. I analyzed quite a lot serial music, dodecaphonic, Second Vienna School, all of this. And then I felt closer to new complexity, and sometimes Richard Barrett too, which I still love a lot. Brian Fernica, of course, one of the greatest composers in the 20th century. But after in France, now I come to French question. Maybe it was in 2002 when I emigrate, let's say, to France, and since there I'm living there. I discovered other kind of approaches, other kind of colors. Harmony takes more and more place in my music. The importance of harmony, from noise to sinus. I mean, spectromorphological approach. Electronic music. I work at the TIRCM for 14 years now, and I am teaching there since 4 years. So, dealing with sound itself has really had a deep influence on me. Even if spectralism never has had a strong influence, but my music can sound sometimes a little bit spectral.
Actually, we have a small an example of your music, so maybe we can listen, and
Good
then
idea.
we keep talking, and the audience can see what are we talking about. Just to explain, before it's a piece, small extract of Wilde.
It's my last opera, Wilde.
It's from 2015, right?
15, premiered in Schwetzingen Festspiele. Calixto Bieto did the mise en scène, and was the orchestra for Stuttgart Radio Symphony Orchestra. So this is music for drama. I think it's my largest piece till the moment, and working with Calixto, in fact, did an amazing impact on me, because since the moment I was dealing a lot with electronics, with technology, with science. Of course, I am still working with science, but and Calixto showed me the importance of the flesh, of the body, of the wood. The stage was only wood, so real wood, not fake. So since then, I think my music has really changed, and maybe I feel now a little bit closer to hyper-technological approach, and I feel really closer to what we really are. We are amounts of flesh and bone. So the sick in human tragic condition in other senses. I seek this human tragic condition of existence, fragility of existence, autoconscience in a universe that really escapes us completely. So we are very fragile, and the sense of life, finally, it's anything for. But we are obsessed to keep there. So this is tragic in some sense, and I think Calixto takes this, also the European story of 20th century, Second World War. This opera is not really about, but has an is permitted by this tragic history of Europe, and this completely changed my approach to composition, to music. Now we are preparing a new project with Calixto, big opera for some years. I can't yet announce it, but I did. But we will listen the passage between two arias in the central part. These are two enfermeras, com es diu? Nurses. Two nurses that keeps a doctor kidnapped, which is now completely perverted by these nurses and sexually perverted. So it's the degradation of a doctor without frontiers, a very altruistic person which is kidnapped and degraded until the limit. And so it's about the fragility, of course, of human condition.
So we see it. And we keep talking, and now we have listened your piece.
A fragment, yeah.
Yeah, fragment.
Of course.
We wanted to talk with you about how do you see the new music these days, and since you are going to be a tutor of the workshop. So it's the only way to approach music from the pedagogy. No, so
pedagogy is very important. Not in this absolutely superior level, of course. The students are composers already formed with a high level. No. Pedagogy since the early years of age. Now I have a son of 3 years, Mark, and I really realize that we are musical animals. Since he was born, he's really moving with music, and I think it's really a terrorist politics to ban the music from early stages of education. So it's even more important to do music than languages or mathematics. It's at the same level of importance to cultivate human intelligence on the early ages, and it is scientifically demonstrated. So I think it's completely absurd politics to put the music in a kind of ridiculous state in music, in education. Then, of course, we have conservatoriums. We have specialized education, which Mixtur is a paradigm in Spain of these extremely international courses in new music from interpreters, but also for composers. I think these initiatives are absolutely important for every country, and this creates links between countries, different cultures too, but we are talking now of another level that takes only about a teeny average of people. For me, the important thing too is to be transversal. Not already, transversality is a word that we are listening since decades to tell, art has to be transversal projects. But I really believe in transversality in the sense that as artists, we are connected to the real world in some way, like scientists, like pedagogues, like writers, like everybody. So we need really them also to be involved in our preoccupations, in our aesthetic researches. And I love, for example, to work with scientists to develop projects. For example, I can commission a libretto of an opera to a physicist, or then years after I contact a French writer, María, Prix Goncourt, to ask 2 librettos for projects, and then I penetrate to another kind of worlds of emotions. And this writer, for example, she's very well known. She sold millions of books, and this permits the music that is, she didn't know about new music and about what we are doing, of course. But then I love to offer recordings of a lot of composers and of new music. And then little by little, other worlds of human activity permit our little world. So with physics too, and Lisa Randall, when she wrote the libretto of High Principle Prologue, she was really involved in music. She came to the rehearsals, she talked to people, and then she sometimes she talks, she presents parts of this opera as an activity that really enriched our scope. And so why not? Yeah, Gérard Griset said music is not about quantum physics, it's not about... Music is about sound, and it's in sound that, of course, but he did Le Noir de l'Étoile with Jean-Pierre Luminet, so he was also interested, I think. And it's a kind of thing that now, of course, also technology, but for me it's more interesting even the thought, the human thought, more science and technology, more literature, poetry than banal literature, for example. But anyway, I think it's very important for us to keep connected to the real world, to keep empathetic to other people. It's another thing that for me is very important in this kind of atelier with young musicians or good musicians, good ensembles and composers, new young composers, very talented, that sometimes empathy is not there. So the best thing that this can happen in these connections is that the empathy works, and some new state of creative adventure emerges from this empathy. So in that sense, I think initiative like Mixtur in here, or the composition course of French Institute too, which I was teaching last year. This was opportunity in Barcelona, few opportunities because there are not a lot, but to create states of empathy that provokes new connections between people of different countries, and this is precious. I mean, this should have the full support of institutions, and this has a value for the cultural tissues of a city like Barcelona, which is aimed to be a city of design, of creativity, yeah. But really we don't have to look as at the mirror all the day. We become narcissistic, stupidly narcissistic. Yeah. This city needs new inputs, and this means this kind of initiative, international inputs. So we Catalans, we aim to become internationally powerful in terms of cultural, of course, not in other things, but then we need also to absorb more input and to grow with this. So yeah, I think about that.
So we could keep talking the entire
It was
afternoon.
very interesting to finish with these phrases.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Moltes gràcies per
Moltes gràcies
invitar-me, és un
per
gust.
estar avui aquí.
Ens veurem sovint al mes d'abril.
Sí.
Sí, aquí está de visita porque viu a França, però tindrà una estrena al final de febrer.
Sí, el 22.
El 22 de febrer a la Fundació Tàpies hi haurà Frec 3.
Sí, amb Agustí Fernández, Míriam Fèlix, Núria Andorrà i Almudena Vega. És un grup d'improvisadors, liderats evidentment per Agustí Fernández. Són, diguéssim, gent, tots ells, grans improvisadors, i és un dels projectes que he iniciat fa ja molts anys amb l'Agustí, híbrids, és a dir, mig improvisats, mig escrits. Realment no he escrit cap nota per aquest últim frec, però hem estat dies i és el vídeo, ens gravem les sessions. Jo, per exemple, els dic com vull les coses, els dibuixo les coses, les escales de minutatge també i tal, i ells improvisen, però a poc anem esculpint el so, no? I és el vídeo, de fet, el videotaping, que es diu, que ens permet de fixar les coses. Tots els músics tenen el vídeo llavors a casa, els vídeos que gravem, i això ens permet construir una obra que dura pràcticament una hora, que és el que s'estrena ara al febrer a la Tàpies. Esteu tots invitats, és amb el cicle del Sampler Series de l'Auditori. I res, l'última de les aventures de moment d'aquest frec que vam iniciar amb l'Agustí Fernández en piano sol. És un projecte híbrid, que és una altra manera de connectar, per exemple, tot el món de la improvisació lliure, del post, entre cometes, free jazz, el free jazz que comença amb Cecil Taylor, espectacular, i que avui en dia està completament ramificat i amb iniciatives que es toquen realment amb la música contemporània. És a dir, jo crec en aquest... I va ser l'Agustí, de fet, que em va proposar això. Em va dir, hòstia, he sentit alguna teu que em recorda molt a coses que jo faig, per què no fem alguna junts? Dic, hòstia, endavant. I com jo tinc aquest origen de pianista, i de seguida ens hi vam trobar, no? A mi em va fer reviure també aquesta sensualitat de l'instrument, aquesta búsqueda amb l'instrument, també amb les parts internes de l'instrument.